we anywhere from here to here.
Which means we are on one of these two ridges, or we'd be crushed, right? If we're on this ridge, we must be right next to the U-boat. Now, this submarine was based on the U-boat design.
So if we find a U-boat, we get in there and we take the drive shaft.
Been in the water for 70 years. Useless now.
No, the Black Sea's anoxic at depth. No oxygen, no decay. There's perfectly preserved Roman galleons out there.
That's a clip from Black Sea. Delighted to be joined by its star Jude Law, the director Kevin Macdonald. Gentlemen, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
Very well.
Very well, thank you.
And Mark's here as well, of course.
Hi, Mark.
How are you?
All right.
It's time to move into your... we should say, by the way, that this is Black Sea, not The Black Sea, which is a different movie altogether.
Is there a different movie called The Black Sea?
Yeah. Five friends move into a house in Oregon, and then Alison goes missing.
You're kidding me.
It's not that film.
Well, funnily enough, we did a lot of debates about whether to have the definite article or not. And luckily we didn't. We would have been confused.
Hang on a minute. Read the description again. Alison moves...
Five friends move into a house in Oregon, but then Alison disappears.
What is that?
I don't know.
What references that? A sea of black? Anyway.
It could be.
Is there a submarine in it?
I don't know. That's just all I could find out.
You're out of luck if there is a submarine in it, because honestly, the chances of doing Black Sea twice with two submarines.
Anyway, so
but it's not that.
And now the director and star will tell you the story of Black Sea and not The Black Sea. Gentlemen, take it away.
Oh boy, I'll start. So it's about a bunch of desperate guys. They're ex-Navy types. And Jude is the leader of them. His character's called Robinson, and they all feel like they've been thrown on the scrap heap of life, I suppose. But one of them knows this story that's going around in the salvage circles, the naval salvage circles, that there's a U-boat being found, a Second World War U-boat on the bottom of the Black Sea, and they think that it may have some treasure on board. So they get together with a bunch of old Russian submariners, and they go to Sevastopol. And Jude, you take over. What happens?
They embark on the mission, and what happens is, once they set off, there's a sort of certain optimistic sort of purity to the commander that I play, in that he believes he's sort of doing it for the men, and therefore declares that whatever they retrieve out of the money is going to be equally spread out amongst the men. Of course, what happens is greed and the opportunity of maybe, well, if there are 12, if there are 11 of us, if there's 10 of us, if there's 9 of us, that haul gets suddenly bigger, the cut gets bigger. And that sort of percolates and filters through the minds of them, which creates sort of conflict and tension between the men. And the submarine itself that they're on is also an old boat, basically, so that things start to go wrong with that too.
So are you pirates on a sub?
Kind of. No, yes, I suppose in a way we are. I suppose in a way we are piratical, yes.
Although pirates on a sub doesn't sound like the best description of the movie. It's Treasure of the Sierra Madre underwater, isn't it?
That's what Kevin came to me with several years ago. And I mean, that's been a film I've adored for so many years. Yeah. And this premise that is sort of timeless. Desperate men in desperate situations doing desperate things to survive. And what was wonderful, what's funny is when I was making it and I was describing it, everyone said, so when's it set? And I was like, oh, no, it's now. And of course, when you see it, you realise, yeah, there are desperate men. There are men who have been, as you said, on the scrap heap of life, who have been chewed up and spat out by the system, who've got nothing to lose, but are greatly skilled and willing to go to great lengths to just try and make something of their lives.
There's also the moment when you first see the submarine, which is clearly not in the best condition. And then the guy says it's going to sink. He says, "Well, we'd be in trouble if it didn't."
Yeah, which is the best line in the movie. But if there's if you have in your mind at this point, the glorious and glamorous life of the submariner, this isn't that movie. And as soon as you see the submarine, you are kidding.
Yeah.
So tell us about the submarine, because some of it you did actually have.
We shot part of it on a real sub. It's a Black Widow sub from 1964, diesel submarine. The one that we were on, we found here in England. Somebody bought it.
How funny is that, right? You write a film set on a Russian 60 sub, and you're thinking, okay, how are we going to build it? And it just happens there's a guy's got one in Rochester.
Where else would you go for one?
Rochester and Stroud. There's all sorts of geopolitics that comes into play in this. First of all, we've just had a by-election in our location last night. And also, it's set in Sebastopol. That's
Yes.
where they leave from, which was Ukrainian when we made the movie and is now Russian.
Yes.
So we've been overtaken by history.
Yeah, truly. Well, I remember coming to once we'd made it, and I saw you again. We were talking about how we were like, well, at least everyone knows where the Black Sea is now, because it was like the world's attention had suddenly been on the Crimea and that entire coastline.
Exactly.
Well, isn't it just off the house in Oregon? So
I think the question is, where is Alison? I mean, that's
we need to go and find that. So you went on a sub. You spent some days on the sub, Jude.
I did, yes.
Have you forgotten?
No, I haven't at all. I mean, I'm rather cautious as to how much I'm allowed to say, because I was invited very generously by the Navy when they found out that we were making the film. They were obviously helping us with research and information. They offered us the opportunity to go on it, and
they offered us both the opportunity to go, but I was busy.
Kevin was busy.
How feeble.
So it was an extraordinary life experience. I mean, quite how much, whether it rubbed off on me, I don't know. I can't kind of say, yeah, I based my whole character on this guy I met. It wasn't like that. It was an extraordinary experience. And
I remember you telling me about the first sort of thing you really noticed was when they opened the hatch and the stench of 200 working men
is horrific.
came out and
The stench is horrific. And the commander of my sub did say with great pride, "You're going to smell like a badger when you get off this."
And was that true?
Oh, it was very true. I threw away the trousers, the tracksuit I wore, because you can't get rid of the smell. It's a kind of weird mixture of vegetation, because they've got obviously sacks of onions and potatoes stashed away, diesel and sweat.
How difficult is it to film in a submarine, either sort of a real submarine or even a set of a submarine? Because it's claustrophobic to watch.
Well, you can make
claustrophobic
it as
to be
difficult
on.
as you like. I mean, one of the decisions I took, having watched a lot of old great sub films, was that the ones that really work for me are the ones where the camera is inside the sub. So, shall I stop? Jude Law on his phone.
It's off.
I looked at a lot of old sub films, and I felt that the ones that really worked for tension and claustrophobia are the ones where the camera never really leaves the interior. So the camera is in with the actors in this tiny space. Whereas in some sub films, particularly sort of Hollywood ones, they'll take the side off the set, and there's a huge crane sort of swinging around, and you can sort of feel that you're not in there. And for me, part of the whole pleasure of this was to make it feel, a submarine is like a spaceship, but it's real, and they really exist. They're everywhere. But it's the same idea that you're inside a machine, and if something goes wrong with that machine, you're going to die. Because you're somewhere you shouldn't be.
Just on the spaceship thing, we've been talking about Interstellar a lot recently, and there is a moment in your movie which is sort of reminiscent of Interstellar. There's a moment where Matthew McConaughey...
In a good way.
In a very good way, in that claustrophobic way, and the tapping on the hull going...
Oh, yeah.
And there's a sequence where they say, just through that hull, there's nothing. It's just billions of miles of nothing. And that's the
Cold,
similar...
dark death.
Yes, exactly. And there's that feeling that submarine movies and space movies are actually...
Yeah, no, they're the
quite
same
similar.
thing, except the difference is that you get ordinary folk being on subs, and it's not fantasy. It's not science fiction. It is real. Every day there are thousands of submariners out there, and so that should make them, I guess, more relatable.
But it's interesting that you make that comparison, because in terms of the spaceship thing, Silent Running, which is one of my favourite science fiction films, is all shot on a disused aircraft carrier, because they thought that's what the inside of a spaceship would look like. It would just look like a very small confined
I
space.
guess it's all that industrial space. I mean, I guess Alien does that very well, doesn't it? It's the idea of space truckers, isn't it? They're sort of like uncouth guys. I mean, I can imagine those same characters being in our submarine, really.
And what did you mean when we were just talking just before we came on air, and you mentioned William Friedkin's Sorcerer as a touchstone, which is one of my favourite films, has just been sort of restored to this 4K version, which we did a theatrical presentation of down in...
Remind me of 4K?
A nice pristine digital transfer. It's not a 35mm transfer, but a pristine digital transfer. And it looked wonderful. It was a film that died on its feet when it came out in 1977. Now looks unbelievably influential. And you cited it as an inspiration.
Well, it is the biggest inspiration on this film. I loved the French original that Clouseau made in the 60s, early 60s, I think it
Wages
was.
of Fear.
Wages of Fear, which I think we talked about a lot. Jude and I talked about when we were developing the script with Dennis. And but then I had also seen Friedkin's remake of that, and stylistically and in terms of the feel of the rusting metal and the sort of men who are kind of on their last, really on their uppers and they got nothing to live for. He really captured that. And so I showed the second half of that movie, not the whole movie, to all the Russians and to the British cast, because we got half the cast, and this is Russian, which we haven't mentioned. But in order to sort of get everyone to think, this is what you're like, this is who you are, you're these guys, I showed them Sorcerer, and it is fabulous film, and way ahead of its time stylistically.
And there's also all that kind of the grinding metal, the grinding of the gears. You really get when the truck. You really get that sense when you're watching your film about the way in which the submarine is driven on these pistons, and it's a very mechanical.
Exactly. It's about man and machine sort of living in some sort of coexistence. They have to be together. The machine is what's keeping you alive, but the machine is a rusting hull.
You live in a machine.
Well,
Exactly.
I remember doing early on a sort of research into just the history of the submarine. When they built the early submarines, they worked out how to make this thing operate. Okay, it's watertight. It's air. It's a bubble. It can exist. But they forgot to build in anything where the man would live. So basically, you are living in the machine, and so anything that's added to that is.
Well, that's the incredible
you're
thing
sleeping
about
literally amongst the pipes, and the kitchen is literally the size of a small coffee table. I mean, there's everything else.
Especially in the Russian sub. We went into some British subs for research, and there are a few mod cons. A little bit of comfort,
Showers?
A little bit of formica. Shower, but you're not meant to use them, are you?
No, you don't. I didn't use. I mean,
it's
don't
frowned
use them.
upon to shower.
Why don't you? Well, what's the point of having one then?
I guess
Just
they're
in
there
case Her
in
Majesty
you
the
get
Queen
covered
comes to
in-
visit or
Really,
So she can have a shower.
No,
Your
but
Majesty, if you'd like a shower.
What's incredible is that the sub that we shot on.
Because if you don't, you're going to leave smelling like a badger. You imagine?
You can't talk like that.
the sub that we shot on had, I think, a full complement of 85 men on board it, and we were filming with 7 or 8 cast at any one time, and maybe 10 crew down there, and it felt packed and crowded. And there were maybe 15 beds down there. And we said, where did everyone else sleep? And the submarine expert we had with us said, well, they had planks, and they put the planks up between pipes over the engine, and they just slept there in between commands. They grab a little bit.
Just on the subject of the Russians, plus also the history and how in people's psyche this is still a terrifying. Just the basic idea of being in a submarine is a terrifying idea. The Kursk tragedy in 2000 must have been. I mean, we've kind of moved on and forgotten about it, but the Russians, this is part of their history and very recent and a tragedy as well.
And that was the thing that was the original spark to me wanting to make this, reading about the Kursk and imagine what it must have been like to be one of those sailors who survived the initial explosion, and you were sitting on the bottom of the seabed in a compartment running out of air, knowing that nobody can reach you. And I thought, that's the setting for a movie. And so that was where I originally went to Dennis Kelly, who's the screenwriter, with that. And I said, look, can we combine that with Treasure of the Sierra Madre? That was my line.
And Sorcerer.
And to my London ears, Jude, your accent is fantastic.
Oh, good.
Now you and you're from Aberdeen. Your character's from Aberdeen. Was it?
Well,
Is that right?
again, when we were early on, when we were developing it and sort of giving Robinson a backstory and trying to make sense of this guy's life and why and what got him to where he is now, it seemed clear to me that he well, I don't know, he shouldn't come from Lewisham, and so I don't know, I just felt that there was something. We looked at various options, and apart from the fact that Kevin is Scottish himself, and I just felt therefore in safe hands, it just seemed to make, I don't know, there's an intellectual sort of gravitas to the Scottish accent, I believe. But
the Aberdeen
in
accent
particular, and the history of Aberdeen too. I had this idea that Robinson's father was probably an unemployed, worker from the docks, and I like this idea that his father had been done wrong by the system, and that, you know what I mean. There was this sort of pride, this nobility to him, but also a kind of pit hard.
It's the granite
worker.
city. Aberdeen is the granite city, and this character Robinson has granite at his core.
Truly.
We've actually out of time. Can you just get us up to speed as to new stuff that you're working on? Kevin, go first.
Well, I'm doing a couple of different things. I'm working on a documentary about a Chinese artist, which has taken me to China a lot recently. But I'm also just setting off doing this extraordinary new project with Brian Cox, the scientist, the TV scientist, which is using a new kind of, or if we're going to be the first people to use this new kind of 3D, which is called Magic Leap. And it's called Magic Leap because it's kind of like, it takes you into a whole different realm of what 3D can be. It's totally immersive. Basically, I could be sitting here, I wear these glasses, and I can see the room around me, and they can place objects that look absolutely real on the table in front of us, on your head. They can just be dancing around there, and they look like they're actually there. Wow. And it's done by projecting onto your eyeball a light field, so it's not a focused image, it's just the sort of the light field of what that image would be like, fed in from a computer. So we're going to do something at the Manchester International Festival next summer, hopefully, if we can get it together in time.
Spend a lot of time, a lot of money, and then Mark will be rude about it.
Yeah, well, he believes in anything more than 4x3 image is kind of fruit.
4x3, 235. Thank you very much. No, it's look, as you know, and I wish you the very best with this. As you know, at the moment, 3D in cinema is not great.
It's not great, and that's exactly what this is. And I'm skeptical. I will always go and see a 2D movie in preference to a 3D movie. But this, when I saw it, this is something completely different. Sure. This is not 3D in the artificial way. This is using the brain to do 3D the way the brain does 3D.
Although nobody believes it, I remain wholly open-minded, and I look forward to seeing the results.
No, we don't believe. Jude, are you being a knight of the round table? Is there some truth?
Not. I don't know. I don't know about that at the moment.
Well, you do.
What is that?
No, I really don't. I really don't.
Well, what are you doing next?
I'm doing. I'm in the middle of a film at the moment with a director I've worked with in the theatre several times, Michael Grandage. He ran the Donmar, and I did Hamlet and Henry V with him. He's making his first film. It's about the relationship between Thomas Wolfe, the novelist, not Tom Wolfe, Thomas Wolfe, and Maxwell Perkins, the great literary editor of Hemingway, Fitzgerald, Edith Wharton, and indeed Tom Wolfe. And I'm in the middle of filming that with Colin Firth.
And then it's King Arthur. Okay.
No, really, it really probably isn't. I don't know.
In 3D.
yeah,
Special
indeed.
new 3D.
Knights of the Spherical Table.
That's the one. Kevin Macdonald, Jude Law, thank you very much.